Okay, welcome everybody to this week's InPower Coffee Break. We meet every Tuesday live from 1 to 1:30, and we pull up a cup and talk about things of interest to us in our lives and our careers, and especially how to be an empowered person in both our lives and our careers. And today's topic, we have a special guest, Andria Corso, who we'll introduce in a moment, who is a longtime friend of InPower Coaching and Empower Women, and has written a couple of books that we've featured because they're really good. And we just want to invite you into these sessions with us live. We, as I said, Tuesdays 1 to 1:30. We stream live on Facebook. We are live on our site at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com. You can get the call-in information there, so you can join us, as we hope you will. And then these recordings are uploaded on Apple iTunes Podcast, YouTube. They'll still be on our Facebook page, and so we encourage you to catch up on past episodes there. So with all that, let me turn it over to Mary to introduce our panelists today. We have a whole panel of 4 of us, and then we'll jump into the topic of the fluid career, which we've been exploring from a lot of different angles lately. And today, especially with Andrea online, we'll explore it a little more deeply, particularly with respect to why so many of us find it so hard to kind of flow through our careers. So Mary, why don't you introduce Sharon and Andrea?
Sure. So Andria Corso is an award-winning life and leadership coach with over 20 years experience working with clients to develop leadership skills, develop themselves, advance their careers and businesses, and create whole life success. She is currently the owner of Andria Corso & Company, a life and leadership coaching firm specializing in helping individuals reach their highest potential. Andrea is also a blogger for the Huffington Post and best-selling author of F.L.O.W, How to Give Up Your Struggle and Allow Life to Unfold Perfectly. This is her 3rd book and is about how to stop allowing false fears to control you and instead step into living in the divine flow of life. To connect with and learn more about Andrea, please visit http://andreacorso.com. And we also have Sharon Miller with us, and you've probably seen her visit us and participate in our conversations for the past few weeks.
So I need to, let me open up the conversation here, but I need to say I misspoke. We don't meet from 1 to 1:30 anymore. We meet from 12 to 12:30 anymore. And I have to get it into my little brain. We've changed the live time there. So have lunch with us and pull up a cup. And I'm Dana Theus with InPower Coaching, and Mary Brody helps us put on these conversations. So let's jump into the topic of the fluid career. We've talked about it before on these shows, and what we mean by the fluid career is the fact that if we look at the statistics, people are only in their job for less than 4 years these days, at least in the private sector. And what that means is over the course of your lifetime, you can have 10 to 15 different jobs. And when you think about your career as a string of 10 to 15 year, 3 to 4 to 5 year positions, that kind of puts you in an opportunity to be thinking in one about what you want next, and then use the current career or the current job to help position you for what you'll be ready for and fulfill you in the next one and the next one and the next one. And so it goes from this idea of like, I'm in a job, static, everything about this job must make me happy now, to more of a fluid idea about your career. Like, well, I'm gaining things here that are going to help me in my next step. So there's going to be some things I don't like, but much of it I do. What am I getting out of this career experience that positions me for success here, but also in taking my next step? So that's what we mean by the fluid career. And more people are starting to look at careers and employment in this fluid model. We just saw that Forrester Research is starting to talk about the fluid workforce. So we know we're onto something here. But what I want to do is bring Andrea in, because she has a lot of experience, not, of course, like many of us do, having a fluid career, but she's also reflecting on it, and from the standpoint of how to really use it to self-actualize in your life, and particularly with this most recent book, The Role of Fear, in helping us stay stuck or kind of move into the flow. So Andrea, first, why don't you talk about why did you name your book Fear to Flow? Like, why there? Why start there?
I named the book Fear to Flow because, well, the book is a little bit of my own personal story about going from living life in this place of fear, so false fears around loss, uncertainty, what other people think, to moving through that, overcoming that, managing that, and getting into what I call the flow of life, which is where we align with our own authentic, natural rhythm of life. So and our careers are a huge part of that. So what's the flow or the path for my career? And we're each individual, so it's different. And then how can I align myself with that? I named the book F.L.O.W because I realized personally that I was spending most of my adult life in this place of choosing from fear. And it was keeping me stuck in not only potential careers or job situations or working with clients that didn't necessarily align with me, but also in personal situations, staying in relationships, friendships, things that didn't align with my flow. So the book is about how to go from living in fear to living in flow. And that's why I named it that, because it's my story and then how you too can do it.
So let me ask you a question, because part of the reason this intrigues me, first of all, it's been my experience too that fear keeps us stuck. On the other hand, when you start flowing, there can be fear there too, but it's a different kind of fear, or we experience it differently because it's not keeping us stuck. Like we're flowing with the fear, right?
Right, exactly.
So what's the difference between the fear that keeps us stuck and the fear that we can flow with? And then let's ground that in, like, how do you use that in evolving your career?
So the fear that keeps us stuck, it's the way it feels. And part of getting into flow is all about feeling and paying attention to the messages that we're getting, not only from our physical body, but from our emotions. So if you think about how fear, like when you're, and I'm talking about false fears, and false fears are the stories, the things that we make up in our head. What if I fail? What if this doesn't work? What if I never get another job that I love? It's all those stories. It's not the real fear that you're in danger and you need to get out of the burning building fear. So there's a big distinguishment there, because real fear is good. It keeps us alive. We need it. But false fears will keep us stuck. And it's, if you think about how it feels in your body, usually false fears feel like tension, constriction, like contracted energy. For me, I know I feel it in my chest, in my gut. It literally feels like it could be like a vice. It's something that grips at you. And then it drives us to make decisions to avoid that feeling, avoid the potential consequence of what that fear is, churning in us. Now, when we're quote, living life in flow, fear does come up. And I think it's the awareness. It's always a choice. And this is what I always tell my clients. You get to choose in each moment. We're human. So we're going to have fearful situations. It doesn't matter, that I wrote the book. I still experience those stories of, well, what if this doesn't work? Or what if I'm making a mistake? What is everybody going to think? All of that. But it's the awareness of it. And then the allowing yourself to move with it. And just like you said, flowing with the fear. So you feel it, you recognize it, you accept that it's just part of who you are, and then you get to choose. Am I going to let it drive my behavior? Am I going to manage it, move through it, and just keep going with the flow?
So flow isn't fearlessness. It's managing the fear differently and not letting it choose for you.
Exactly. And I don't know, somebody asked me once about overcoming fear. And I don't know that we overcome it, because it comes back. It's just managing it. It's recognizing it, that it's just being aware of it. Doesn't have to be bad. It just has to be something that you pay attention to and explore. Why am I feeling this? What is it telling me? Is it something that I need to be? Is it real? Is it, is this a real fear or not? So it's going through all those thought processes and things to ensure that you don't let it choose for you.
So I'm just noticing, for those of you who can't see us here, we're all nodding. So we're all like, yeah.
I'm really glad you said that. I just wanted to, if I may interject, I agree. It's like I was thinking as Andrea was saying that, it never really goes away. Mm-hmm. It just manifests in different times, and it's how you manage it. And I appreciate you saying, recognizing it. Is it a story in my head? Is it real? Even in the best of circumstances. So I think it comes down to how we manage it. as well. So
Absolutely.
thank you for mentioning that.
And I will say, I agree with that. However, there are aspects of the fear that can be paralyzing. So even if you recognize it and you try to choose otherwise, you can still be paralyzed. And that's what we use detriggering for, because the fear's there, the stories are there, but you can't really make those choices if you're so balled up in the panic of it. So you need to release the panic and take the power away from the triggers so that you can see the fear for what it is. You can see the story for what it is. And then you're now in a more emotionally balanced place to actually do what we're talking about here, which is make these choices. So I always, step one is always detrigger, like take the emotional charges out of your triggers so that you can kind of have this conversation.
Right.
So let's talk about this from the standpoint of, the fluid career or our career selves, because, you said something, Andrea, which really, I think is opening the door to something really important for, even if we're not terribly triggered, we're not completely motivated by our fears, there are still those stories, no one else is going to hire you. You're too old, you're too young, you don't have enough this, you don't have enough that. Here's the problem. And it can keep us from feeling confident that, we do have another job in front of us, like feeling like we have a choice and we're empowered in our employment situations. Even when we look behind us and we say, well, yeah, I've had like 4 or 5 successful jobs, but somehow that next one feels harder to believe. So what's a good way to get into a confident orientation vis-a-vis our careers and the possibilities that we have ahead of us? What are the stories we usually hear, and how can we learn to put those aside or come up with new stories?
I think what you said is so true. It's we can look behind us and see all the successes, but yet when we have to go forward, it can be paralyzing. And in my experience, and what I work with my clients on is it's practicing the managing of the stories continually. So it's like with anything. And some of the stories are ones that we've probably had around a long time. What if I fail? What if they grow. So it's what if I fail? Then what if I can't support my family? What if I can't pay my bills? And it goes on. And I see literally people who are extremely financially responsible, successful people making up stories that they're going to suddenly be in bankruptcy, because what happens is when the voice of fear is so loud, it's the only voice we hear. So to recognize it, again, you gotta, like you said, you gotta detrigger, you gotta kind of step back and recognize, okay, I'm telling myself a story. And then what I tell people to do, and what I do personally, is explore that fear. So literally go to the bottom of it. So what if it came true? What if the next thing failed? Or what if you couldn't suddenly pay your bills? What would you do? Literally, how would you feel? What would you do? You don't want to spend a lot of time there, because you can really get deep in it. Yeah, but what happens with most people is you discover that first, the story is usually a lot worse than if the actual fear came true. Because what most people will say for that particular story is, well, I would just get another job, or there are plenty of ways I could make money. I would make it work. Or if this failed, I would learn from it and do something different. And so we find that we're quite resilient. And we find that, again, the story is much worse swirling in our head than if it actually happened. And what I tell people to do is continue to practice this process. What starts to happen is that voice of fear quiets down and it stops driving us. And what rises is the intuition, is our heart, our gut, the thing that's pulling us in a different direction, which might seem a little scary, especially in our career. But once we start to follow that, sometimes it's a little bit of a leap of faith, but you have to just follow it, because when you take the leap and you truly quiet the voice of fear and let your intuition guide you, that's when things start to show up. People, places, circumstances, because that's where I say that's when you're in your flow and you have the fluidity of a career it's almost like momentum carrying you. But it's practice. It's not going to be like, oh, I did this exercise once and now I'm good. No. Mm-mm.
Well, and like you said, things show up. Sometimes they've been there all along.
Mm-hmm.
We just now can see them.
Right.
So I'm curious, Sharon and Mary, I know you both have experience with what we're talking about in your own careers. Can you share instances where the fear was holding you back and you managed to get past it and, great things happen?
Yes, I'm actually experiencing a little bit of that now. I liked how Andrea expressed it's easy to look backwards, or you did too, Dana. It's like we've all had these wonderful successes we can look back on, and that gives us confidence, or it gives me confidence knowing I know what I know my story, I know my pitch, I know what I can bring to the table. But when you're looking, and I'm at the juncture of my career search as well, and it's like part of me has run on fear. I had that story. What if I can't pay my bills? What if I don't like my next job? What if I fail? And I think what I'm running on is just pure perseverance and will and determination. So while I do have stories in my head and I acknowledge the stories, I truly, I kind of see it more as being proactive versus reactive, and I think something that helps me too as I continue in my search and trying to find my right path. And, part of me wants to follow my calling. Part of me wants to, let me just bring some, do something, bring some money in. I mean, like I go in so many different directions. Yet at the same token, I keep a routine. I think that's really important as well for people that are in fluid situations in life. I think they need, the one thing that brings calm is routine. Keep doing what you're doing. Find something in your life that maintains stability so that you don't waver. Or when you do run on fear, you can go back to that place of consistency and comfort, and that's routine.
Mm-hmm. Mary, how about you?
Well, Andrea, I've read your book. Right? So yeah, and it was very helpful, and it got me to do more of the flow and let go a lot more. I know there's been a lot of times that I've been, because working for myself, like there's always those stressful moments, right? Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And like one in particular about letting go. So, because I've been working on this whole let go, let it all flow together, right?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And one example of this, which I think is like, this is like the best example of like, if you let go, it all works out. So I was working with this client. They were getting rather difficult. And you can tell when things are starting to go to a head. Like I was talking with the client, the VP was like, the things are escalating, right? And finally, I guess he had it out with the CEO and we were all out, right? Boom. And so, I called the team, say, everybody wrap it up. And so then I was like, well, what am I going to do for money? Right? So like, how's this going to roll? Lo and behold, that night, 9:00 that night, I got a call about a new gig.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Totally worked out. Right? So then I'm noticing things changing in the industry I'm in and like how things are moving around. And I've been getting drawn more into like, more content-driven things and all that. So I just kind of going with it, right? Because again, things are moving towards more conversations on interactions. That's great. Get this random message in my LinkedIn inbox about a grad school program and how they're offering a scholarship. They didn't even start the conversation with me about the school program. It was about the scholarship.
Wow.
And I talked to them. I went to the thing because I'm curious, right? Because you're like, what's this all about? And applied, and I'm starting at the beginning of April.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm doing that while working, and it seems like by letting go a little and not trying to be so controlling of what I'm doing, like just let it kind of, like it'll work itself out. And it's hard. Oh my God, it is so hard.
And that's what I love about the idea of flow, because to me, we talk about this, our disappointment comes from having expectations, right? Well, I mean, you have to have some expectations, or you can't like get out the door and just function in life. But we do, going back to the issue, Andrea, you're talking about, we have choice over how we deal with everything, what stories we deal with. We also have choice over what we define as success.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times what keeps us from flow is fear, but also we have this definition of success that looks like something we don't think we have. And we forget we can redefine success.
Right.
We can define the feeling of flow as success, not necessarily, how much money we have in the bank at any point in time. And I'm not saying it's that simple. We need to be thinking about our financial future and things like that. But flow to me is it's a state of success.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us, and even like I try to be there, but it's a practice. You really have to practice being in flow, but also remembering this is what I want. This is success to me. I'm happy now that I'm here, instead of always coming up with all that stuff you don't have.
Right.
That you're not certain of, you're not secure of, that can keep you out of the flow. And it's a challenge.
Oh, yeah, definitely a challenge. Definitely. And I think what Mary said about letting go, really it's in that place of fear where we grasp and we're trying to hold on and control. I want it to go this way, or this is the way, like you just said, Dana, this is the way success is supposed to look, versus just stepping back for a minute and rethinking that, and knowing too, like what Mary said, that this is going to work itself out. Because the beauty is, whatever situation you are in today, guaranteed the pendulum's going to swing. Things change all the time. And so reminding ourselves that this is a moment in time, and this too shall pass. It will change. The career transition will not be a transition forever. That too can enable us to just let go a little bit and release our grip. And it's when we do that, like Mary's great example. Oh, wait, something's showing up. Now there's this opportunity. Because you let it go, and it's almost like when you let go, you open yourself up to what wants to emerge, versus you trying to control it and force the things and grasp. And so letting go is a big piece of, I think, having a fluid career.
I totally agree. I like to think of this as situational as well, and opportunities have come to me that I never would have thought of, but I'm going with it. Why not? And
right.
or a lead came from someone I couldn't even imagine getting a lead from. Going with the flow. Let's see where it takes me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to add another dimension of this conversation, which has struck me personally lately, which is that the flow, if you will, or success, or whatever, all these good things we're after, right? They change through our lives, right? So what the flow and the success in your 20s is different than in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, and I'm going to presume further on out. And I find myself, right? We all know where I stop now, right? But the point is that I find myself getting stuck in definitions of success that are like, 10 years old or 20 years old for me, right? Now, I'm not saying that everybody in their 20s, 30s, 40s has the same definition of success, but my point is that I find the stories in my head are like, some of them are so outdated. Like, that was relevant before I had kids. Well, my kids are out of the house now. I need to update, my definition of success. And when I do that, and it takes some conscious thought, I begin to realize, wow, now I can flow more, because I'm not stuck thinking that I'm unsuccessful because I don't look like that.
Right.
And so it may be age, or it may just be that what we're being challenged to do is constantly stay current with ourselves.
Absolutely. And that is one thing that I think is so important. I think success and defining success is something that needs to be done on a pretty regular basis, because we change, and even year to year, you might have a vision or something for a given year, and then life happens, things happen, things change, and it changes. Right. The world changes. So we need to continually be, reflecting ourselves on what's best for us. And certainly it's not what was 10 years ago. In many instances, for me personally, it's not even what it was 2 years ago. So really just paying attention to that is critical.
And actually, it just occurred to me, because I just did this in a coffee I had this morning with a friend who's also a work colleague. I sometimes forget the power of telling other people my new definition of success, because when I tell them, then they can update what success is for me. Like Mary wrote a post on our blog a while ago about how you have to re-educate people when you're in a job search. You have to tell them what you've learned. Yeah. Like, tell them that you're not that person they worked with 15 years ago. Right. The same is true when you when you have a new definition of success for yourself. You kind of need to share that with other people, so they update their vision of who you're trying to become and can support that instead of whatever they thought before, which may or may not have been conscious. And we forget about the power of telling the world who we are, what we know, and what we're striving for. And it makes it real for us too.
That's a great point. While I'm changing, others also need to know I'm changing.
And they're changing. So ask them what their definition of success is.
Great point.
So Andrea, I'm going to let you close out.
I do have a question that I wanted to ask, and it came up about when we're talking about visions of success. And I know sometimes how we define success becomes more competitive. So how does competitive work with flow? Or how do you see that working together or not working together? Because I don't see it working together because you have to know yourself, but that does interfere, right? Like, because sometimes your definition of success could be competitive.
Meaning winning over other people?
Mm-hmm.
Beating other people?
Beating other people, or like you're basing it off of what other people think.
Well, then,
successful.
So what I would say about that is, and I don't, again, because being in flow is different for each of us. So some people, their flow might be all about competition. I don't know. That doesn't work for me personally. So what I always suggest is to pay attention to you and what works for you, meaning how are you feeling? So when you think personally about, your definition of success, if it has pieces of competition in that, whatever, maybe if you're a professional athlete and you've got to win certain things, but how does it feel in your body? Pay attention. Does it feel open, expansive, like maybe a little bit of nervous excitement, which is that fear that we flow with? Or does it feel like constricted, resisting, tense? Because that might be an indicator that this is not my flow and I'm basing this off of what other people think or other people expect my definition of success to be. It really is a very personalized thing that only each one of us can define for ourselves. And I'm not saying that competition isn't good. In some instances it is, and it really works well for some people. It's just, you've got to figure it out for you.
And I'll just add to that. I agree with everything you say, Andrea. And I'll just add that when it comes to working with teams and in cultures, the distinction is always, are we trying to be our best or are we trying to make sure other people lose?
Right.
And so, the two energy signatures to those two states of being are what I think, Andrea, you were talking about. One of them is going to be more flow and expansive. I'm coming into my best. And when I want other people to lose, compared to that other flow, it's going to feel more restrictive. So,
right.
It's competition by itself isn't bad, but your motivations, and if you want other people to lose, there's an emptiness inside you that's not being filled by your own success. And so addressing that emptiness allows you not to need other people to lose for you to feel good.
Yeah.
So it's all in how you experience it, not necessarily what it is, I think.
I agree.
So we need to close out, although we could easily go on for longer. So let's do this again. But Andrea, I'm going to give you the last word. What are the takeaways we should all take away from this that we can think about the rest of the day and try to put into practice?
Well, based on this conversation, I think really critical to having a fluid career and embracing that is just what we just were talking about, is getting clear on your definition of success and what does it mean to you, and taking time to do that and be introspective about it so that it feels right in your heart and gut. And then it's aligning yourself with that. So taking the steps, small steps each day, one step at a time, to move in that direction. And again, paying attention, being really acutely aware of how you're feeling, and how you're choosing. Are you making choices because you're afraid of a consequence? Or are you making choices because you feel like this is a freedom-based, open, expansive way to go? That's a fluid career. So that's, starting with the definition of success, take action, make choices that align with that definition.
And I'll just recommend there's two concrete things you can do. One is buy Andrea's book, Fear to Flow.
Thank you.
And you can also subscribe to our Career Center, careercenter.InPowerCoaching.com, both of which will give you lots of different ways to think about the fluid career. So well, thank you all for joining us today. This was great. Let's definitely do this one again. And invite everybody to join us at InPowerCoaching's coffee break site, coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com, to catch up on previous recordings, as well as subscribe to reminders so that you can learn the day of what is coming up that you might want to join us live for, and find us on iTunes and Facebook and YouTube, and you'll find all the links there at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com. So thanks to Sharon and Andrea and Mary always. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye.